Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another David and Friends special guest interview. I don't do these very often. These people are handpicked because I've met them. They have a beautiful heart. They got a beautiful light inside. They have a message, a personal story to share, and they share something a little different, unique that the other guests haven't talked about yet. And today, it is my honor and privilege to introduce Sol Saint-Germaine, who somehow you came across my Instagram feed. I don't know if it was a sponsored ad post or just a recommended algorithm type thing, but you were talking about getting clarity on, I guess, in your life, yourself, something like that. And well, first, before I go into you, say hello.
Oh,
It's like I'm going into this like really long introduction here. So everybody, this is Sol. Just for an introduction, you are a hypnotherapist. You're a life coach. You help people break through and transform their lives and up-level their business and all kinds of stuff. But you speak from lived personal experience, which we're going to get into in just a second here. And that's why I invited you onto this, because I saw the value you were giving us. And you had mentioned that in your life right now, you're feeling inspired and called to increase your presence on YouTube and social media. And I was like, well, I've got a little YouTube channel. I asked, you said yes, and here we are. So that's the introduction, people. Now we're going to move on to the personal good stuff, the juicy stuff. Let's you want to just jump into your story about what kind of woke you up and changed the trajectory of your life, and starting when you were a little kid. So give us a little context, like how old were you? What was your home environment? What was your life like? What was the trajectory your life was on at the time? And then take us through your transformation experience, what you learned, and then how you grew and changed and your journey after that.
yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah, we had such an amazing group, and your presence in the 5-day experience was so potent. And when you asked me to come on here, I was like, absolutely. I couldn't wait to just see what would be created. And yeah, just loving the energy that you bring, and like you completely transformed the space as well. And so, yeah, it just feels really sweet to be here. And gosh, don't I have a story? So I lived in 26 homes by the time I left on my own when I was 16 years old. Just to give a little context of the instability that my early years were.
And why was that? Were you going through foster care or something else?
Single mom. And I mean, we moved every few months as the money ran out. My dad was in trouble, and he would come around every now and then, and it would bring trouble with him, and it would leave. We lived with my grandmother a couple times, but there was also just like like mold infestation in one place, and like cockroaches, and just like there was just always something. And we kept moving and moving, and I went to 6 different schools, and I was bullied at all of them. And so I, from a pretty young age, had a lot of anxiety and depression. Like life was pretty dark. Feeling like going to school, I felt like I couldn't trust anybody, and I was scared, and going home, not being sure like what was going to happen, if my mom was going to be, we're going to be packing our bags and going again soon. And so it just felt like I never felt like really settled or safe. And so very young age, I had a lot of anxiety, and I was even hospitalized with panic attacks a few times.
Wow.
So it was a
It's
lot.
it's hard to know who you are or have confidence or a sense of security at all. Like if you don't have a stable home, like
Yeah.
you don't feel rooted, like how can you build anything else? Like if think of a tree, right? If it has no roots, it's not going to be able to grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a very interesting setup your life began with. Then what happened?
Well, what's interesting is I just thought that's how life was. I didn't, I mean, I knew I wasn't happy, but I just figured like life was like that for everybody. Like, like scary and hard and like that's all I
Right.
knew.
Because right, that's been your world, so you assume that's normal. Yeah.
World of scary place. And saying that, like, my mom is a very joyful person, and I'm naturally a very joyful person. So we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, and so there was a lot of moments of joy, but there was this sort of constant lingering darkness in the background for me that would kind of come and get me at times a lot. And so when I got to high school, I just started high school in grade 9, and I remember one day I was skipping class all the time, and I was actually skipping class to work. So I actually had 2 jobs once I started high school, and a lot of times I was skipping class to work, and sometimes skipping class just because I didn't want to be there. And so one of these moments, one of these afternoons when I was skipping class, I was outside in the backyard in the smoking pit where everybody was like huddled around. And I was walking up and I was curious, like I just saw these people giggling, like laughing so much. And I went over there and I asked, like, what are you doing? What's going on here? And this one kid just turns to me and puts his hand out, and there's a bag and it just looks like sticks and dirt. And I'm like, what is that? And they're like, it's mushrooms. I'm like, okay, mushrooms. I just start eating them. They're like, oh, have more, have more. And I'm just eating them. And I'm eating more and more. And it tastes like sticks and dirt. It was gross, but they're having such a good time. And I'm like, whatever. I was full send. I was very, adventurous. Okay. I was willing to, at that age, sign me up for anything because what's going on kind of sucks. So let's see what else is out there. And I just kept eating these mushrooms.
And
And
these aren't the kind you get at your typical grocery store, I take it.
these are not shiitake mushrooms. These are moldy, dried psilocybin magic mushrooms.
Now, at the time, did you know about that? Did you know what you were consuming? Like,
I mean, I had heard about something like that, but I really had no context. Like, oh yeah, like, what at that time I was smoking cannabis, smoking weed. I kind of had just started, so I knew what that was, and some people would talk about mushrooms, and I think we like, I don't know, watched a movie one time. It was like my first time ever smoking weed, and I'm like, everyone's like talking about mushrooms. I didn't know what it was, but I had heard of it, and so I was like, okay, let's go. I'm just gonna eat all of this, and I'm eating them, and I'm eating them. Like it must have taken half an hour because all I remember is just sitting there with these mushrooms. And at some point, I'm sitting there by myself. Everybody else just left, and I start vomiting, just projectile vomiting. Like the world starts spinning and I'm just purging and purging. And I started to purge basically these like rainbows. I started to get into the trippiest headspace I've ever been in, and these rainbow vomit is coming out of my mouth and all over the ground. And all of a sudden, these rainbows start shooting out into timelines. And I can see these threads of timelines that are coming out through the center of me. And all of a sudden, I am seeing, sorry, I just have one. All of a sudden, all these threads of timelines are coming through me. And I start looking at them, and each one is a different story from my family, from my ancestors. I could see my mom's story that was moving through me, and I could see the the feeling of being abandoned and alone and the struggle and how life is so hard. And I could see my dad's story running through me of how he was never good enough and he couldn't provide for his family and the shame around that, and just all of these stories. And I realized it didn't even start with them. I could see all of my ancestors back, and I could see how far back these stories began. And I saw that I was next in line and that these threads and these stories were moving through me, and they shot out into the future, and I could see exactly where I was going. And I was terrified. My world just got so small, and it felt inevitable when I saw how far back it was coming from. And then I started to actually pull them out. and put in a new story. It was like a movie slide, kind of like I was just taking the slide and putting it through. And then all of a sudden the path in front of me, the timeline started shifting. And I started putting a new story. Like, actually, the world is a beautiful place. Like, I can do and be anything I want to. Like, I just started trying on new things and new slides and seeing the different reality that was created in front of me, the different timelines that opened up. For the first time in my life, I realized that my past was not going to determine my future. I realized that my fate was in my own hands and that the world wasn't such a scary place. So this experience faded. I woke up underneath a tree by myself in a park I had never been in before.
So you went wandering during this time, huh?
From the craziest dream of my life, I was like, was that real? What just happened? And my depression was cured from that experience. Now, I still had anxiety because I knew that I could change my story. I realized that day that the story you tell becomes the life you live. And if you change your story, then you can change the timeline that you're on. But I didn't quite understand how to do that just yet. I knew it was possible. So I was no longer depressed. I had hope, but I still didn't know how. And so this just started my journey of seeking and trying to understand what was going on with this reality and the small town I grew up in Canada. Just suddenly, the whole world opened up to me. And from that moment, I realized that I didn't have to be scared of life and that I didn't have to live the same story that my parents lived. And so I ended up going to live a couple years later in a Shivananda yoga ashram. This is my first kind of time of having like a teacher. And I did my first yoga teacher training when I was 17, living in the ashram, started studying yoga and the mind, and just began a series of really like deep, deep personal study and traveling around to try to understand what it really means to change your story.
Mm.
And that was such an incredible experience that changed my life. And I would say that my life purpose sort of landed in that moment. I didn't quite know that at the time. I was still just trying to heal my wounds and just feel okay in the world. But that vision, I came to understand later, actually, in the most like recently, like last 2 to 3 years, as I've been studying deeper ancestral ceremonies, I actually came to understand that part of my ancestors on my mother's side, the Cree people it's their tradition to have a vision quest ceremony around that age, eating mushrooms out in nature by yourself. And I was like, wow,
Just had it happened automatically.
this
You know,
happened.
some people believe that before we're born, we exist on the other side and we plan out our lives. And there's some discussion about how detailed that plan can be. Like, is it just like the main highlights, or is it every little thing, or somewhere in between? But there is a very common belief that shows up in a lot of spiritual experiencers that, yeah, to some degree, we pre-plan our lives. And it's interesting, like maybe your soul chose that initial upbringing, that home life,
Yeah.
to create the trauma, the pain, the pathway that was going to lead you in one direction. And then to, at the right time in your life, go through this transformative experience that opened your mind and saw new possibilities. And then the following years, really integrating it, locking that in and learning how to apply the lesson, how to embody it, and actually shift your timeline personally so that you're not speaking from theory. You can really help people because you've done it yourself first.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really think that every challenge, every painful thing, the abuse, even like there's a lot of stuff. All of those things created the circumstances for me to develop like extra sensitive capacity. And both of my parents are autistic. And there's such a heightened awareness that for me, when I didn't know what to do with it and I didn't know how to manage it, and it just felt like a problem and it felt overwhelming, it just seemed like chaos. But as I started to understand myself more and stopped actually fighting against what I went through and started to understand the lessons and the gifts, I couldn't have done it any other way. Every single thing I've experienced has led me into this version of myself that I really wouldn't change anything, because I can see and feel exactly why I'm here. And there's nothing in the world I would rather be doing. And I couldn't be doing this unless I experienced everything that I went through. And it's such a liberating feeling and such an empowering thing to know that the challenges we go through are like chiseling the statue of the art that is our life. I fully, I feel that is true for me in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. No one wants to suffer. Pain sucks, right? No one's going to argue with that. And I know for myself, when I've been through really deep pain and trauma, or anyone else, like it's very natural to ask why am I going through this? And maybe you comment on this if you agree, disagree, or have an alternative opinion or whatever. But for me, while I'm going through the pain and trauma and the suffering, it's really hard to know why. You kind of need hindsight. You need perspective. You need to have gone through it, get through it to the other side. And then you can look back and say, what did I learn? How did I grow? What did I gain? What good can I take from this and transform it into the greater good for the rest of my life, for other people? Like, just to make it a little personal, I don't have a healthy functioning relationship with my parents. I really wish I did. I tried so hard to make one work. We exhausted every option available, and things got so painful for so long that I reached a point where the suffering was just unbearable, and I didn't want to be on earth anymore. I didn't want to be alive anymore. And that was kind of my wake-up call that no relationship was worth dying over to get out of, even if it is with your close family. And that for me was the start, the turning point. There was still a lot of healing and growth that had to come from there. It wasn't like an overnight fix, but it's where my timeline started changing to a new direction. And now that it's been many years since then, and I've gone through the healing and the processing and the releasing and all that, the forgiving, like everything, to where I can genuinely love them and wish the best for them, even if they're not part of my life, because I still have to keep myself safe and healthy. I got to love myself first. What were you saying?
When did you first realize that? Like, that you could still love them and not have them in your life? Is there like a specific moment when you were like, you had to kind of make that choice?
I don't remember a specific turning point moment. I think it was kind of gradually. It was a combination of a lot of the self-help books and spiritual teachers that I've been following would hint at, like, this is ultimately where you want to get to. And I have a really wonderful blessing, a gift, an advantage where I've been able to talk to God and my angels, my spirit guides, ever since I was a little kid. And they've been helping me through a ton, like through that and so many other things in life. And little by little, gradually, like as I was ready, as I was growing, God doesn't force you to grow any faster than you're ready. I was able to slowly find, that peace, that forgiveness, that healing. And I think what really pushed me over to the edge, maybe there was a moment. Um, I had a mystical one with the universe spiritual experience where I saw how we were all interconnected, how we're our own unique individual souls, but there's a piece of each of us in each other.
Yeah.
There's a piece of God in each of us, and that's how we're connected. We're connected through that common source of God. And when I saw that, and how, at the higher spiritual levels, like there's just unconditional love for everybody, like more than we understand here on earth, than we've experienced in a human body. There's a pure, spiritual version of it. But seeing that even in my worst enemy, my worst abusers, my worst bullies, anyone who's hurt me, there's a piece of me in them and a piece of them in me. And there's a piece of God in both of us. And I can't truly love myself or love God if I'm also simultaneously hating somebody else. And when I saw that and realized that was a tough cookie to swallow. Because I want to love myself and I love God, but if I'm hating another person, I'm also in part hating God, because they are a part of God. And yeah, they're doing their own thing. They're their own independent soul too. And maybe they're doing and saying things that aren't very loving, that aren't godlike, but they're still that extension. They're still that fractal, that part of the divine. And there is a commonality between us that just what I experienced, what I saw, what I understood was I cannot hate anyone and still love completely myself or God. And that was tough, because I'm like, oh, but I don't want to forgive this person. I don't want to love them. They hurt me bad. And I kind of had to wrestle with that for a while and
Yeah.
work on it. And in time, I got there. And I think it helped to understand the unconditional love God had for me and everybody else, and that it's not about being perfect. And all of us screw up in some way. All of us have flaws. All of us are imperfect. There is perfect doesn't exist. Unless you have a sign on your wall that says everything is perfect. But that's the point. We humans put labels on things and say it should be this way and not that way. But the reality is, from a higher spiritual perspective, as I understand it, everything is perfect. It is as it's supposed to be. Just here in these bodies on this earth level, we are learning, we're growing, we're experimenting, we're experiencing, we're doing all these things that often aren't loving. But I think it's part of a larger process, a larger picture, to learn about how to be more loving, so that it's a free will choice to be loving and not just defaulted or forced upon us. And that we can own that like, yes, I am a loving soul because I've experienced love, I've experienced non-love, and I choose love.
Could only be loving if you have free will. It's the only way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my to get into the to get into the metaphysical side here a little bit, my understanding of things currently is this physical universe we're in. So Earth, the Milky Way galaxy, the visible universe, all the other galaxies, just space-time, is itself kind of like a self-contained reality. And I almost describe it as like a limited feature demo version of what true reality is. And
like a simulation.
Yes, like a simulation. That metaphor works well. The trick is there's nuance, right? Because we can say, oh, reality is a simulation. Yes, but that doesn't mean nothing's real or nothing matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simulation to protect the souls to protect the greater spiritual reality so that we can mess up and do everything wrong here without any permanent long-term damage. So it's contained to experiment, to explore, to try, to experience, to do all this kind of stuff. To, there is no time on the other side. Our souls are eternal and immortal. So take as long as you want, have as many experiences as you want. We have infinity. There's no rush. Go at your own pace. Go follow your journey. Take your path, as many paths as you want to explore. And this, as I understand things currently, to the best of this is the edge of my knowledge and awareness. The soul is growing, is evolving, is defining itself. Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? What are your gifts, your interests, your passions, your talents? What makes you unique in the capital R reality, the higher spiritual reality that contributes to the greater whole? Because we are all interconnected, but we're not all the same. And it's our differences, it's our uniqueness that makes it so rich and beautiful. And we all benefit from any individual soul's growth. So those of us who are here on earth right now in a body, it's hard. We're going through spiritual school, some would describe it, right? But as you and I grow and we learn more about ourselves, about others, about what we want to be and what we don't want to be, how we want to be more loving, that we become more loving ourselves, because of that interconnection, your growth, my growth benefits the whole. Everyone celebrates, like everyone on the other side is excited about, proud of, excited for the souls that go through this hard work to grow and become brighter lights and more loving beings, because it just elevates the experience, the vibration for everyone on the other side. That's how I understand things.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
do you think everything exists beyond time and space? Like everything is a different, like past and future don't exist. And like the idea of past and future is actually all right now, just on a different kind of dimension. So everything that has ever existed or will ever exist is already decided? Or do you think that we're evolving and creating and generating new experiences through our interactions with each
Yes.
other like this?
I love this question because time travel has been a passion of my entire life. I saw Back to the Future as a kid and I was hooked, and I'm like, when I grow up, I'm going to build a time machine and I'm going to, I'm going to be a time traveler. And that never left me. To this day, I've refined it. I'm no longer trying to pursue it through a physical machine. Because there's hazards with that. Like one, it could break down. You could be stuck in the past or the future. You could be marooned in time somewhere. But two, like someone could steal it and use it that maybe shouldn't have that power. So I've been looking for safer ways to still get the heart of, what is it about time travel that I love? I love exploring, understanding, and helping all of us get better life experiences, get on better timelines like you're talking about, right? Like what you experienced when you were tripping on mushrooms was a form of time travel. You saw the path your life was headed on. You saw your future and then figured out, okay, here's how I can change that and get myself to a new future, have a different experience. That's time travel. So I've been looking at spiritual ways of approaching this. And as I mentioned earlier, I talk to my guides, my angels, and God all the time about everything. And I'm always asking them questions about how does it work on the other side and all this stuff. And they've taught me a lot about this and many things. And specifically to your question, I would say the answer is yes to both, but it depends on what level you're looking at. So from a higher spiritual level, looking at what's going on in the physical world, in the physical reality, yes, they can see it all from start to finish. They know how things are going to play out. But the trick is there's still free will. And just because it ends up one way doesn't mean we were predestined to have to be that. That's just what we freely chose to get to. But if we made different choices, we can change that outcome. And I think part of the perspective from the higher spiritual level is they don't just see what the current timeline is. They see alternate possible timelines depending on all the variables, like the free will. Like, if individually or collectively as humanity choices are made in this direction, this will be our future. If individually and collectively we make different choices, that'll be our future. And they can see it all. So there's still that free will, but the past, present, and future is all in front of you. So it's like watching, if a movie is just a bunch of still images in a frame, right? You got 24 usually images per second. And if you had a big enough wall and you put up every single frame along that wall, you could stand back and see the entire movie at once, and you could dive into any one individual frame you wanted. And that's kind of how it is from the spiritual perspective to the physical world. Mm-hmm. They see every moment in time, and they can drop into any moment that they want or need. Mm-hmm. But unlike a movie that has fixed, burned in frames, it's a little more fluid and dynamic. And it's like, it's more of a choose your own adventure movie where there's multiple paths you could take out. So it gets very 4-dimensional very quickly. Mm-hmm. But on the higher spiritual level, so we're talking 5D plus, again, this is just my best understanding currently. Everything is now. Like, there's, as my angels explained it to me, the past, present, and future are still separate points in time, but they're all also part of now. They're accessible from now. And the same way with space, like here and there are separate points, but they're all also part of right here. This is really hard for our physical brains that evolved to interact in 3D space to understand. I like barely grasp it myself. Huh?
Sounds like a hologram the way you're describing it.
Kind of. Yeah. But I also want to add that I think things are infinitely, continuously expanding on the higher spiritual side too. So because there's no time in the way that we understand it here at this level, it's the eternal now. There is no end, so there's no like final destination we're going to reach. And from what I can tell, there's like multiverses. There's multiple universes and potentially new ones being generated all the time, and new layers, levels within each one. I don't fully understand it, but I've seen hints and clues that just say like, it's continually evolving, it's continually expanding, it's continually being added to. There is no end. And that's part of the joy and the excitement of it, because we can be infinitely creative and have infinite experience because of that. And this is kind of an educated assumption here, but as souls are continuing to grow and evolve and become more and expand and just become greater versions of ourselves, we are pieces of God. So God is continuing to grow and expand with us. And I suspect as we collectively are continuing to learn and grow and evolve and become more and more spiritually, that is further pushing out the possibilities of experience and, double lined our reality or eternity.
God stepped into his main energy.
So that's how I understand things currently. So yes, it's not all known and predetermined. I think we are still discovering and uncovering it forever on the spiritual side, on the higher realities. But from that point of view to this reality, we can see it all. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, when this experience happened when I was 14 and just opened up all these timelines, I've had this relationship to understanding time that is, I'm quite a scientist in that I just experiment. I find out, I'm like, let me just see, like, regardless of anything I learn, I'm always like, I'll find out. I'm just the hugest skeptic. It doesn't matter what. I have to have my own direct experience. If I don't, and I'll tell you, I will tell you like when something's like an idea or a theory or something, and I'll tell you when I've had a direct experience because I speak from a completely different place. And I love testing things out. And so I've tested a lot of different things, playing with the timelines. And one of the most dominant things I've experienced, right? The story you tell becomes the life you live. The story you tell creates an entirely new timeline. And when we're doing the like healing, going back to childhood, the regression, the somatic release that of things that have been stored in the body in the past, and you go to those moments and you reparent that younger version or you process that emotional wound, it literally changes psychologically the past, the way we see it, which changes the present, which changes the future by changing the story, by releasing the emotions, by just not seeing, the negative things that have happened in the past as a bad, awful thing that is just to be scared and to protect yourself from, but actually, oh, this is a thing that helped me develop my gifts. This is a thing that opened up my sensitivity. This is a thing that taught me boundaries so that I can actually have this massive capacity to love more people. And like all of these things that only could have been chiseled in the fires of pain and fear in some ways. Not that it has to be that way, but it's quite efficient. When something's painful, it gets us moving real quick. So I think the timeline travel piece is so cool to look at it from that perspective, because when I go and I change something, and especially when we're like working with language and NLP and you actually start to like describe things, a lot of people, going into trying to change their story and like maybe are trying to use affirmations and trying to like, get a different mindset about something, will like, they'll be like, I really want this thing. I'm going to be this way. Like this idea of like how it's going to be different. And then the next level is like, actually, no, I am that now. But an even more powerful thing is put it in the past. And you look back. Like if you want to be more confident, you look backwards to see where you were confident. You look backwards and you look into your past, and it's like it makes this assumption that kind of bypasses the critical mind that wants to say, well, it's not here right now. But if you look backwards and you find moments and you reframe certain things, this is another kind of timeline traveling that shapes reality. It really does. Like, when we're working with something and we shift an unconscious strategy that we have to protect ourselves, that came from something when you were 6 years old, and you no longer need that strategy anymore, your future will be different, guaranteed every single time. Your reactions, your responses to life, what you think is possible. So this is absolutely time travel in the most efficient sense. No technology required.
Yeah, you during the 5-day main character energy class that I just went through with you recently, you did an exercise about this for, we would set an intention, a vision for who we wanted to be, what we wanted to experience in life. And then we'd get with a partner and we would retell it as if we had made that decision 3 months ago or 6 months ago or whatever. And now in the present moment, we're sharing with that partner all the action steps you took, all the experiences you had, like how you grew and changed and cool stuff that happened. And you're talking about it as if it's real, as if it's already happened in the past, that you didn't make this decision to be that person, to make that change today. You made that 6 months ago. And look at how your life is different today. And it gets you all excited and you're feeling the energy. And it's a really fun exercise. You don't just share your story. The other person listens and then affirms it and adds to it, takes you even deeper because they don't have the limiting beliefs that you do. So even while you're doing this exercise and you're like, yeah, 6 months ago, I made this change and I've been living my life this way. And it's amazing. Look at all this wild, fun, crazy stuff that's happened. And that might be like at the limit of your imagination, but your partner can take it and run with it even further and like open your eyes like, wow, I never even thought of those possibilities, and anchor it in even better. And because you're talking about it in past tense, your brain accepts it as history, as fact. It's not a might it happen, could it happen, is it possible for me? You're visualizing it in that moment as it's already been done. So of course it's possible.
We are actually so malleable. Our brains, our mind, our sense of self, it is actually so easy to change. It's crazy how, like, we actually don't have to do anything and things will change. The effort is actually staying the same. And it's so interesting what happens because people think changing is hard, but the part that's actually hard is trying to keep up with who you think you are based on how you have been. That's what requires effort. That requires mental effort. That requires, like, it creates physical stress on the body if you're keeping alive a persona or identity or sense of self that's dragging you down. That's what requires effort. That's what makes like weighs on your vitality. But change is always happening. And when you do something like that, I mean, what did we do that for, like 3 or 4 minutes? Something, it was
Yeah, per
very,
person. Yeah, right. Yeah.
very quick. And so you just do that, and the shifts that happen immediately in your energy, but also, like, what does that cascade into for the rest of your day and the days that follow? Because you're just like, wow, all these things are possible for me all of a sudden. It doesn't take much to shift your mind. It just takes so much energy to try to stay the same. That's what is actually draining and tiring.
We have talked about a lot of great stuff today. We're coming up. I think we're around an hour now. We started late because of I was having tech issues, but I think we're about an hour into this. Um, let's bring it home. Let's wrap some things up. I like to ask some big life questions of my guests at the end of the video. What do you feel is the purpose of life? And if let's say I do have a physical time machine, and we could go back in time to any point, like when you were first born to yesterday, or anywhere in between. If we could go back in time to your past, and you could tell your younger self something, what would you tell her?
What was your first question?
What do you feel is the purpose or meaning of life?
Well, I actually I actually don't think there's a purpose to life.
Interesting. All right, elaborate.
I don't think there's a, like, singular answer to that question that is for everyone. Um, I love to flirt with nihilism. I really think that it's a choose your own adventure, and that life is the meaning you give it, and that the very question is the purpose is to find your purpose. It's to decide what you want to make of it. And I really see I've had this is a very, very direct, visceral experience I've had many times of really seeing the mirror of life, of relationships, of situations. That I love to call it the living tarot, the just like how everything is pointing me back to myself, and that my intention, my meaning making, everything is just constantly reflected back to me. And I don't think there is any purpose other than what I give it. And I don't even think that we have to be loving. I don't even think that there's a goal that is meant to be that you have to reach enlightenment. I don't think that there's anything better or worse, more noble, more anything for everyone. I think we're all on a different journey, and I think it's just, if you were to see you have a whole color palette of paints to paint a picture, you know, it's just all in the color wheel, non-hierarchical. And I know Stephen Hawking has the measurement of the different emotional states. And I see that more as like frequency of like channel tuning, but I actually don't think that any feeling, experience, or meaning is more or less right, correct. And so I have a very, very neutral uh, perspective of life. And I think I like my version the best for me. I love the meaning I make and my preferences and my values. But I don't think that that the way that I choose to live my life is like the way that everybody's supposed to, or that that's the answer to life.
Yeah, well said. I'm going to chime in with my 2 cents related to that. From a perspective of from the other side, from God's point of view, all of us individual souls are completely, truly, authentically, unconditionally loved. And I need to emphasize unconditional, which means whatever you choose, whatever you do or don't do, whatever you want or don't want, you are still loved just the same. The love for you as a soul is guaranteed no matter what. And I really do feel, believe, understand that God wants us to be who and what we want to be. That we are autonomous, we are independent, we are self directing, we have free will. And that it only makes sense if we can truly choose who we want to be, what we want to do, what we want to experience or not. And I really do agree that the purpose is to find and figure out, choose our own purpose. That's part of the freedom, the free will, and the unconditional love is who do you want to be? What do you want to experience? What's meaningful to you? They exist. God loves them. Period.
Mm-hmm.
They have free will. God wants them to be free.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, life is just a direct feedback loop. So people are getting the experience that they are of who they are being, right? Like there's that element of what is existing, and then we kind of get into like, okay, past life stuff, what's the karma? But life is a direct feedback loop of how we're being. And so when we change how we're showing up, our reality will change. So I feel like it's like that's the perfection in it for me, where there's like, well, you get to see who you are in any given moment, and the choices that you're making are always creating your life experience. And there's there's also what I've come to learn. So I went really hard into love and light, like like just be positive. I had my little phase of that. And I also came to find the beauty in grief, the power in anger, and the tenderness that brings me into greater touch with my humanity and with life by being able to access the full range. And I recently, last week or the week before, I just had a good cry. Like I've had so much amazing stuff happening in the last couple of like 2 months. It's just been like new energy, I've been like speaking at events, hosting online programs, just like all this like expansion and growth. And it's just like this high buzzing feeling. And it was almost getting too much. It was like so much, just I was feeling so full, like it just needed to pop. And so I had a good cry, and like for no particular reason except just like we can't just keep only inhaling, right? Like there's daytime and there's nighttime. It's in our nature. We have to like we need that texture to have the dynamism of this entire experience. And there's so much value in the full range of our emotional experience. I had that cry, and of course I was resisting it because like that's just the nature of our emotions. Even as somebody who's practiced really going into a lot of different emotional capacities,
Sure.
I still resist it. I'm like, oh, just
You
sit.
just get faster at like recognizing it for what it is. Like, okay, well, all right, I know what to do, but you're still feeling it. It's, yeah, like,
Yeah. But eventually I surrendered to it, and now
yeah.
all of a sudden I'm soft and I'm in my heart, and I feel more connected to myself and to life. And I really think that there is a usefulness to all of these emotions. That is it's just the part of the color palettes,
Right.
that
Part of the rainbow of life. Yeah. And I love that you touched on this because yeah, sometimes I've certainly met these people in my life too, where close friends of mine that would get so deep into the love and light and positive thinking and all that kind of stuff that they actually are putting themselves into a state of denial or spiritual bypassing, and they're just like, oh, there's no problems, everything's fine, and I got to think positive and only look at the positive because I don't want to manifest the wrong stuff and all this stuff. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's balanced. I don't think that's true spiritual enlightenment. I think integrating, embracing, allowing, holding space for all of it is a much more enlightened state. And I've also argued with people about this over the years. A lot of spiritual traditions or books or experts will tell you like the goal is to destroy the ego. Like the ego is the bad guy and you got to like get control of it and crush it and eliminate it and just be pure love and spiritual whatever. I don't agree with that. The ego is a part of you. It serves a purpose, and true spiritual enlightenment, in my belief, in my experience, is about unconditional love, which means loving all of you, including the ego, and embracing and integrating it. I think the key is, the nuance here is don't let it run you. Don't let it control you. Like it's your servant, not the boss. It's a part of you, but recognize when the ego is talking versus when your heart or soul is talking. And then make a choice from a deeper place of how you want to show up, who you want to be, what you want to say or do or not. But it's not bad. It's a part of you. It's what makes you an individual in a human body. If there was no ego, you'd just be like one with everything and just like dissolve into the ethers. I don't know. Like
That's where main character energy actually came from.
yeah.
Well, because I was contending with this myself. Like, I love this main character energy, this feeling of it, this idea. Like, okay, if your life is a movie, you're the main character. What is the audience screaming for you to do next? I heard this question and I don't even remember who said it, but I was like, oh, wow. The world had opened up in my mind. And then I thought, wait a minute, main character, like, what does that mean? And then all the things ran through my mind, like it's selfish, it's like isolated. You think you're the only person, everyone else is a side character. And it was just, I had all of these stories and it revealed so much of my own limitations that I had to fully integrate my ego and my soul to be working together. And the path of being able to reclaim that, it was so potent. And of all the things I did, of like almost 20 years of exploring consciousness and deepening my own practice and my study and holding space for people and retreats and immersions and this ego piece, this integration of the ego, of bringing it front and center, of working with it, of playing with it. And I think part of the reason why it was so significant for me being neurodivergent is that being able to create some people will use a mask to hide something,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to actually create a mask in a way that is like a fun, conscious, playful um, creation of who you are and who you want to be. And so it's less of a mask of something that's hiding, and it's just who do you want to be, right? And it's that integration of the soul and the ego. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, thank you. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self something, what would you tell her?
I don't think I would tell her anything. You know what? I don't.
See, I would trust you with a time machine. That's a great answer. I mean, there's a lot of great wisdom, like life lessons we've learned. Like there's lots of valid answers. But sorry, I didn't mean to like jump on your answer there. But like, for people who want to learn more about you, maybe check out an offering of yours or work with you one on one or anything. Where can they get that info?
thelivingnarrative.com.
Okay. And I'll put the link to your social media and stuff in the description as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Because yeah, you got YouTube, you got Instagram. I assume you're probably on other things too.
Yeah, I am on YouTube also, Sol Saint-Germaine, and Instagram is The Living Narrative as well. Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts, questions? Any just wrap us up. What would you like to conclude with?
Yeah, I notice there's this expansion energy of just like opening up all of these possibilities and these conversations of spirit and multiple lives and timelines, and there's just so like it's so expansive and there's just this desire to bring it down into the body and
Hear that.
and feeling like just because it's like it's a big conversation. Sometimes listening to something like this, tuning into this can be
Fun.
ungrounding, fun and ungrounding too, right?
Yeah, like I'm all about that. Like I love exploring this stuff and talking about it, but let's simplify it, ground it, bring it home, like get grounded back in our bodies. What does that mean? How do we take these big ideas and apply it in some meaningful everyday way?
Yeah, I think the thread moving through this is about really being where we are, trusting the process, no matter what is going on, no matter how crazy and illogical, stressful, overwhelming, emotional, completely like rock bottom, or whatever is going on, to give ourselves to the intelligence of what life is bringing us, and to look into the mirror of life to see what it's showing us about ourselves, to allow our relationships, our life circumstances, the numbers in our bank accounts, the feelings, the weather, really everything, to bring us back to ourselves and the emotional journey, and what it's showing us about ourselves is really all we need. There's so much that we can talk about. Like I feel like we could go for hours talking
Oh,
about.
sure. Yeah, no doubt. Days. We could do a 6-month spiritual retreat together and really dive deep with people and still not cover it all. Like
Totally. And yet it's like, okay, we're going to finish watching this video and then I got to go eat and I got to
right.
go do my dishes and I got to go live my life. And to bring that back home into trusting the process of what is happening in our life. There is a greater intelligence. And even when we think something is wrong or bad or shouldn't be that way, you're arguing with, your mother, or something, there's conflict in a relationship, like lean into that and what that's bringing up. That is the medicine. We want to go get all the answers. Like you said, we want to try to figure out what is my future self going to tell me about what I should do, what's the best option, like what decision should I take. But actually, we don't really need to look very far. We can look right in front of ourselves. Sometimes when I'm helping people with their business and they want to bring in new clients, and then I ask them what's going on in their life, and they're like, oh yeah, like my sister and I are having an argument right now, but like I don't want to talk about that, let's talk about business. And I'm like, this is related. Like you think it's not related, but whatever is activating, wherever that thing is, maybe don't want to look, the thing like that's uncomfortable, where the pain is, where the stress is, leaning into that and getting curious about what it's revealing and doing whatever you can to be in greater integrity with who you are, what you want, your needs, your boundaries, to bring yourself into right relationship with what's going on. Whether that's acceptance, whether that's boundaries, whether that's leaning in, having a breakthrough conversation with somebody, whatever it is, these are the things, like everything you need for your evolution is happening right now. You do not have to look far. It is right here, right now. And when we actually work with the materials that are here with us, things will start to evolve. Things will start without any theories of anything. We will be able to take the next step when we are fully here with what is present and in our lives at this moment. And
So
so,
you're saying I don't have to go to another country and meditate for 12 hours a day and only eat vegan food and read scriptures for the other 12 hours and get zero sleep. And you're saying I don't have to do all that to grow, to heal, to transform, to get on my best timeline. You're saying where I am, what I'm dealing with, what's in my life is teaching me something.
mhm,
And to not fight it, but to lean into it and see what the message is.
yeah.
And to trust that we are guided, we are protected, that the system is working in our favor, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, because it often doesn't. But so how I feel like someone watching this might have a question of how do I know when to trust? Like, what if subconsciously there's just a pattern and you keep going back to abusive relationships or you keep staying stuck in poverty or whatever? Because that's your wound, that's just your conditioning, your environment, whatever. The feeling is like, well, if I just lean into it and I just embrace it, I don't resist it, like that'll just keep the pattern going. So what's the key here to trusting the process? What's the missing piece that gets them from just repeating their past to actually going with the natural flow, but getting onto a better timeline?
So the first thing I'll say is when it comes to intuition and following your gut instinct, if you have had a lot of trauma, you probably actually can't trust your gut instinct. And this is something that can be jarring to hear. But when your gut instinct is designed to maybe make you fawn in certain circumstances or make you numb or run away, or you have a certain response because that's what's happened in your past, that's what's conditioned in your body to react as the right way to respond, there actually is a time where you can't just go off your gut feeling until you really do have a track record of being able to go, okay, my gut is bringing me to the right places. It's really important to actually make decisions from what you want in a neutral emotional state. And so it's actually what a lot of people will not tell you, like, especially in spirituality um, circles, like, oh, trust your intuition, follow your guidance. I'm like, no, be logical. Like, if you have had a lot of trauma, you need to be more logical. You really need to actually think, where do I want to go? What is that going to do for me? Like, okay, if you're in an abusive relationship, you want to be in a healthy relationship, or be on your own for a little while, or get support, or, maybe spend some time with a trusting friend, or depending on what the circumstances, you want to actually use your logic to make decisions as you're doing emotional healing. Without the somatic process, it's actually hard to have a clean signal from your intuition because it's
Yeah.
going through the
The muck, the filter of yeah, all the wounds. Yeah,
exactly.
it skews the information.
Yeah. And so if you want to create a new timeline, you got to get the story, right? Where you want to go. You have to make a new choice, and it has to be a new choice. So if you're making the same choice as you've done, you're going to get the same results. That's obvious. That's not new. Anybody listening has heard that before. But the reality of actually doing it is you're going to make a choice that you haven't made before. And so that's going to be uncomfortable. So the thing that's going to make your life change is going to feel uncomfortable. You have to want it, and there might still be actually there will be resistance because it's new and it's different, right? But actually deciding logically what you want to create and then allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable about it and taking a more logical approach in the beginning of where you're going, And then when I say lean in, what I mean is lean into the feeling, lean into the emotion, lean into the sensation of, oh, I'm afraid to leave this relationship, but it's not healthy for me. Okay. So you logically decide you're going to leave because you know that's what's actually better for you. You're going to make a new decision. Now you're afraid of being alone. Now you're afraid, how am I going to survive on my own? Now all these things, lean into that. Lean into the pain and the fear and the hurt and the sensations that exist here, but make a new logical choice. Not lean into the relationship that you know is not working for you. So you do have to bring in some logic if you do have a lot of, trauma that you're still healing from.
That's excellent. I agree. I think you really hit it well on. That just trust your gut, follow your intuition is great advice after you've gone through all that work. After you've done the healing, the transformation, and you can look back and say, who I am today is very different than who I used to be. When you get to that point, yeah, then maybe start and test it. Start with small stuff. Like I remember when I was first learning, like, can I even trust my intuition? Like I was getting these feelings and I would test it on all kinds of like little random things that had no consequence in the real world if I got it wrong. And it built a relationship. It built trust to identify it correctly. Because there's your gut instinct, there's your ego instinct, there's a higher spiritual intuition, and they all kind of feel similar. So you got to get good at identifying it, and then knowing like, oh, this is actually trustworthy, and then you grow into it for bigger and bigger things. But yeah, well said. So unfortunately, we got to wrap up. I know. Thank you so much, Sol, for everything you shared. I really loved this conversation. I love you. Thank you for showing up and sharing your heart, your experience, your light. Yeah, I don't want this conversation to end, but I guess I have to. So
Thanks so much for having me, David. It's been really great just diving in and exploring and seeing just the wonderful world that's created when two come together. Just be in the
yeah.
heart space. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for doing the work yourself and now using that gift to help others, and for coming on my little channel and sharing your story too. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, David.